For whatever reason, Billy on the Street personality and comedian Billy Eichner decided to play the bigotry card because nobody wanted to see his newest movie that opened up this past weekend. He claims, and I quote, "Straight people, especially in certain parts of the country, just didn't show up." Okay, first let's put that lie to bed before we break down what really happened. According to a 2022 Gallup poll, this year, 7.1% of Americans identify as LGBT. Since there are just over 331 million people in the US, that means that there are approximately 23.5 million LGBTQ people in the US, according to Gallup. Eichner's movie Bros made $4.8 million in the opening weekend, and movie tickets are $10 plus even in the cheap areas. The metro areas puts them closer to about $20. Putting this in context, even at $10 a ticket, you'd only have to sell 480,000 tickets to make the box office, and to do that, you would need less than 3% of LGBT people to go and see the movie, across the 3,300 or so theaters it played in nationwide. If the LGBT plus communities in LA, San Francisco, New York City, Chicago, and all the other places that Billy Eichner wasn't trying to impugn had showed up, they'd have tripled the opening weekend. But instead of being honest about raw numbers and poor performance, he decided to use bigotry to justify the failure of a mediocre product. Now, even if we assume he's correct, it boggles the mind that he would make a movie explicitly not for the heterosexual community and then somehow expected they show up and give him money anyways. The selling point in marketing seemed entirely wrapped up in the casting and not the plot, as though people should care that it's an LGBT plus movie starring LGBT plus actors, as opposed to caring whether or not it's a good movie. What Eichner fails or refuses to acknowledge is that despite Judd Apatow being a producer on this film is no Apatow flick. Hell, Apatow barely makes Apatow movies anymore these days, and they don't typically do well. But Eichner, like so many before him, opted to take a formula while not understanding why it worked, and also why it may not work as well now, miss the mark even for that type of movie, and then blame others for his failings. And this is no different than when Kevin Smith tried to ape Apatow as Zack and Miri Make a Porno. He thought that his audience was the same as Apatow's, and his arrogance got the best of him. Back then, Kevin Smith was asked by the studio to change the title simply to Zack and Miri because they couldn't run ads before 9 p.m. if he kept the word porno in the title. He stood his ground and lost that advertising as well as the market share that comes with it, and he made it seem like he was more interested in selling smut than the rom-com he attempted to direct. The crew behind Billy Eichner's latest flick did the same thing by putting an orgy in the trailer. Eichner himself stated that Universal had to force theaters to show it when they balk at the content, because theaters know their audiences. And here's the thought. If you want to make degeneracy a part of your story and characters, so much so that it's part of your marketing, don't be surprised when people who don't glorify hedonism stay home. Like Kevin Smith, Eichner and crew forgot that their job was to entertain and sell a story, idea, and characters, instead of making something for themselves alone and then crying foul when others didn't throw their hard-earned money at a narcissistic passion project. This excuse to fail nonsense where Hollywood blames everybody but themselves is exhausting. Much like Viola Davis implying racist intentions behind people not wanting to see The Woman King, a movie that likely only exists because of the popularity of Dora Milaje and Black Panther, Eichner is blaming homophobia for his own failings in a society that has celebrated and corporatized Pride Month for decades now. So you mean to tell me that Will and Grace managed to put out over 240 network TV episodes across 22 years in a society that stays away when gayness shows up? Please. Maybe if you'd cast somebody that anybody cared about or even knew the name of, and had marketed the movie to a wider demographic. I mean, really, rom-coms are traditionally the fare of romantically inclined women, but there didn't seem to be a single character for them to relate to. You'd have had a better showing. Maybe if you hadn't insulted half of America, more people would have wanted to show up to give you money. But really, the problem with guys like Eichner and most of Hollywood these days is that they don't understand that they are the very people turning the audience away. We, the audience, can't trust that a movie aimed at a specific demographic and directly sold to not be for specific people won't go out of its way to insult the others in the audience. There is no chance that this movie doesn't malign straight people implicitly or directly, and few people want to opt in to being attacked, especially when they just want to be entertained. What writers, directors, and Hollywood writ large needs to understand is that they aren't entitled to other people's time or money, so maybe work harder at earning it, because people generally are over being scolded into supporting people who actively hate them. That's all I have for this bit of entertainment news. Thanks for watching, listening, subscribing, going to Patreon, yada, yada, yada. Cheers.